All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much to everyone who made it out for today's event. We are really excited about our incredible panelists, a little bit more about them in just a second. Today's event is a salon specifically for policymakers, sustainability professionals, and elected officials who are interested in zero waste as a path towards building just and sustainable cities. We are hosting it. Gaia is hosting this event. We are a organization of over 800 organizations and individuals all around the world, and we envision a just zero waste world built on respect for ecological limits and community rights, where people are free from the burden of toxic pollution and resources are sustainably conserved, not burned, and not dumped. We work to catalyze a global shift towards environmental justice by strengthening grassroots social movements that advance solutions to waste and pollution. Today, we are going to be talking to panelists who have worked with strong and engaged constituencies to achieve justice and equity to build successful zero waste programs in their cities. Discussion topics include working with innovative zero waste service providers, building local jobs and justice, and opportunities for cities to model leadership in government operations, and with zero waste as an opportunity for meaningful and lasting public engagement. A couple of logistics. This session will last 1 hour. I'll spend some time introducing you to our speakers and to the Zero Waste Master Plan before asking our panelists their opening questions. After that, we'll be spending some time answering audience questions, so please put your questions as they come up in the Q&A box, and we'll try our best to get to as many of them as we can. And if anyone has any technical trouble, you can connect with support through the chat box. On to our speakers. We have Soko Made joining us from San Francisco. Soko is a feisty environmentalist who is passionate about sustainability and women's rights and is striving to make a difference in the world. As the city government zero waste senior coordinator at San Francisco's Department of the Environment, Soko has an integral role to increase awareness and compliance of city environmental ordinances and regulations. She assists with several government zero waste programs, including implementing zero waste prevention and recovery technologies in institutional kitchens, promoting reuse of city-owned surplus materials through its online exchange system, improving recycling and composting programs for city agencies, and developing contract specifications that support San Francisco's environmental policies and goals. We are also joined by Mary Pat Clarke, who is the Baltimore City Council person for District 14. She has over 30 years of experience in the council. Mary Pat was the first woman ever elected president of the City Council, and in that role was the lead sponsor of the nation's first living wage law enacted in 1994. She is a teacher by profession and has instructed students at the Johns Hopkins University School of Professional Studies, the Maryland Institute College of Art, and the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. She was a founding board member of the Greater Homewood Community Corporation and later its president and executive director. And last but not least, we have Maya Gaul, who is a creative entrepreneur who engages with sustainability and creation in the urban space. A worker owner and sales team leader at CERO Cooperative, she arranges the new food waste recycling programs and provides customer service. Her interests range from business development and sustainable design to art, holistic living, and permaculture. Maya was a 2017 Chapter Network Fellow for the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives and the Democracy at Work Institute. She graduated from Columbia University in the city of New York with a bachelor's degree in English literature. Now, a little bit about the Zero Waste Master Plan. We're really excited about our shared vision for a just and resilient zero waste future for our cities with you here today and through the Zero Waste Master Plan, which you'll see on your screen now. It was released at the end of September, and you can take a look at zerowasteworld.org/ZWMP. And my colleague Denise is now flipping through the document. You'll see an option at the top of the screen where you can download it as a PDF as well. We know that zero waste saves cities money, creates good jobs, leading to stronger, more vibrant local economies. It also protects public health and serves justice to communities long harmed by the cumulative impacts of polluting facilities. Zero waste systems, also commonly referred to as the circular economy, are also a crucial component of climate action plans and a must for any city serious about mitigating climate change. And that's precisely why we've drawn upon the collective expertise of the diverse organizations and partners within the Gaia Global Network to develop this comprehensive tool, the Zero Waste Master Plan, to help elected officials, policymakers, sustainability professionals, and advocates, one, understand what is and is not zero waste, two, get through the nuts and bolts of developing a community-driven zero waste plan, and three, become familiar with a menu of common sense implementation options that are grounded in environmental and social justice. So thank you to our speakers for being here today. I'm going to start off with your first question, starting with Soko. You'll have 5 minutes to answer. Oh, someone in the chat wants the link to the master plan, so if someone could share that. Yeah, so your first question, Soko, what can city staff do with their city operations to lead by example?
Okay, thank you, Aditi, and I am very honored to be here today speaking with all of you and sharing San Francisco's best practices. As Aditi said, I work in the city government section of the Zero Waste program at the Department of the Environment, and I've been working with city entities for 13 years. I can say that I have learned a lot about city operations. A lot more than I thought I would ever learn about city operations, but it really has been a pleasure to work with the city operations because I've gotten a better understanding of how our city works and city government in general. So for me, what I've learned about city government and getting city staff to do zero waste programs has been to build relationships. First and foremost, it is important to build relationships with the people you're working with. So anywhere from like the custodial supervisor, the project, the property manager, the department heads, the staff themselves, right? Having a relationship with all those people is key to getting a zero waste program implemented. We are lucky in the sense that in all of our department locations, we actually have zero waste coordinators. These are our people at all of the different agencies who are our point people. There's 2 of us who work on the city government team, and we have about 60 city department locations. So it's really key to have a zero waste coordinator. That's your point person to go to. Most of our zero waste coordinators are either people who are already excited about zero waste or actually facility operations people, because they understand the movement of material in the buildings. So I would say that is an important aspect of it, is building relationships, having zero waste coordinators that you can work with, developing relationships with your department heads, because it's not just about, you have to get them to buy in. So you need top-down management, but you also have to get the people, the boots on the ground, buying into this as well. So you need both sides. I would say the other relationship that's really important is a relationship with your refuse hauler. And we're unique in San Francisco that we have one refuse hauler that is publicly regulated, but over the years, we've been able to create the programs that we have and establish a good relationship with them. So I'm sure you all know about our Fantastic 3 program, the recycling, composting, and trash collection. And it's consistent throughout the entire city. So just working with our hauler has really helped us improve our programs and make headway in terms of zero waste. And then doing staff trainings. So yes, we have the zero waste coordinators who can do the trainings for us, but I have found that it's really important that we get in front of everyone and actually do the presentations, because you have that connection. People see you not just as a government official, they'll see you as a peer, talking to them about why it's important and what they can do to make a difference. But I also think listening to what they have to say is important, and sometimes you have to meet people where they're at, right? So it's not always about going in and saying that you must do this. sometimes it's good to listen and say, well, why, how can you make it better, versus coming in and always telling people what to do. And I think that's it. Yep. So developing relationships, appointing a zero waste coordinator, actually having good policies as well. What I really love about government is that we can make change from within. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. So having good policies, and then having people who champion your policies, but also listening to what people have to say. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Soko, for your insight there. Now on to Mary Pat. Mary Pat, we would love to know, what can city councils do to move zero waste forward, to involve communities in making a zero waste plan and in ensuring community benefits? Oh, you're on mute.
Oh.
Oh, you're still on mute, Mary Pat.
I just switched off. Now am I okay?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, good. Don't take that away from my 5 minutes. And thank you so much, Aditi, for your gracious orientation to this project. I'm very excited to be part of this great crowd, and I'm learning a lot already. So in Baltimore City, thousands of our poorest South and Southwest residents live in neighborhoods surrounding a behemoth incinerator called Bresco. A branch of Wheelabrator, Bresco is the largest source of air pollution in the entire city. Not coincidentally, surrounding neighborhoods have the highest rate of asthma in the state of Maryland. And by the way, the city provides 62% of the trash burned at Bresco through a contract blessedly supposed to end in December 31st, 2021. This has been our council's anticipated date for banning the burn and implementing zero waste. You asked about the council getting the community involved, but our story is not like that at all. Quite the contrary. It was Benjamin Franklin Public High School in Brooklyn, and that is one of the poison communities surrounding this Bresco, who amazingly defeated an additional incinerator's bid to come on board. And so that incinerator doesn't get to be in Baltimore City. That was those students. In the victory lap that the students took, these high school advocates inspired the swelling of a large coalition which moved zero waste into priority status with the Baltimore City Council. So we were led by the youth into this whole issue several years ago now. In turn, our Department of Public Works was led to include zero waste in its less waste planning project, although always taking issue with our timeline. Since 2017, City Council has worked with students in their neighborhoods and partner organizations in developing a zero waste plan approved unanimously by our Baltimore City Council. Our greatest ally in city government and has been the city's Sustainability Commission, its diverse and grassroots membership, and its environmental expertise and just plain guts. Thanks also to Gaia for the support you have given to these communities. We really appreciate that. It's made all the difference for the communities in their advocacy, especially for what is the umbrella group, the South Baltimore Community Land Trust. And because of the activities of the council, but led by the community, we have accomplished our own, the community's own and our approved Fair Development Zero Waste Plan. We have enacted a Baltimore Clean Air Act. Of course, it's under appeal questions later. And we have an encouraging budget campaign going on to fund $16 million in recycling and compost containers for every city neighborhood, every city household, beginning with the underserved and low-income neighborhoods. Baltimore's Bresco contract ends a year from now, as I said, on December 31st, 2021. Our goal is to wake up next morning to the beginning of a zero waste new year. But our mayor's administration is now negotiating with Bresco for an extended contract of 10 years. In response to this new news, City Council introduced legislation which is pending to prohibit new city contracts for incinerators. But City Council has no vote on contracts themselves. Contract agreements in Baltimore are made by the Board of Estimates, 5 people, whose membership gives our mayor control of a reliable majority of its 5 votes. So you asked me mainly, how do councils recruit and work with communities? But the answer in Baltimore is communities set the pattern and recruited the city council. Now we're asking them, recruit the mayor. And we're right there trying to do it side by side. To be continued because we have come too far to wait so long. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Pat. And that's really exciting the way that things are happening in Baltimore. To see where things go. And folks, if you're interested in hearing more about the work that the South Baltimore Community Land Trust is doing, we actually had folks from there on our first launch event that happened a couple weeks back, and we can drop the link to that in the chat. It's also available up on YouTube. Now on to Maya. Maya, could you please share what do service providers like CERO need from cities to maximize opportunities to reduce waste, create good jobs, and benefit community economic development?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. And it's amazing to hear Mary Pat and Soko talk about their work. And also thank you so much to Gaia for rolling out that zero waste initiative. So I think, you know, the first part to put SEDO in context is to understand what is SEDO, how is it created, and what makes it different. So SEDO stands for Cooperative Energy, Recycling, and Organics. My community elders, so African Americans and Latinx, came together at a conference initiated by Gaia, probably in 2011, to discuss the low diversion rates in Boston and in what ways can Boston increase its diversion rates in recycling. At that time, there were 2 different organizations, Boston Workers Alliance and the Massachusetts Coalition for Safety and Health, one that was majority Latinx and the other that was majority African American, that came together. And through those working groups, there were people who were, you know, in the underground green economy, collecting bottles off the street because they were immigrants. They didn't have any other means of income. There were people who were aged out of the job market and wanted to create jobs for themselves. So they were currently collecting used grease and recycling that. And they came together. And when the state passed a food waste ban, they saw the opportunity to create CERO. From those 24 people, only 5 people went through the process to form a worker-owned co-op. So all of our jobs are worker-owned, meaning when someone works with us after 6 months, they have the ability to join worker ownership. They can vote, and they also have the ability to do profit sharing. So that's just some context of what CERO is. So once you understand that this is a startup, you know, this is an initiative that initially was Black and brown people. Now we're a diverse multicultural cooperative. And so you have to understand that funding was a huge part to have a local entity start up, because when you have working class people, they don't have, you know, family members who have a lot of wealth or a network of people of high wealth individuals. So cities being able to access or cities being able to offer startup funding is going to be really important. unsecuritized loans, unguaranteed loans for people who are interested in creating local jobs within the circular economy. That's really important. The next part that's really important is education, right? Because the bulk of our work is educating people on why you should not put food waste in the trash. Why is it important to bring food waste to local farms? Why do you not put glass in compost? That is the majority of our conversation, and people want to know this information, but it's just not commonly taught in Boston. And I think San Francisco is a place that we always refer and look up to, because in the collective consciousness, composting is a thing. So we in Boston and at SEDO are looking to further that education, but we can't do it on our own. So cities, if they can add that to their curriculum and K through 12, that'd be great. Another thing is innovating the bid process, right? So cities historically will issue an invitation for bid for companies to throw the lowest price out there that they can do work for, but that's detrimental to our communities. It's detrimental to the people at those companies, and it's also detrimental to our environment, because you're essentially looking at all the ways you can cut costs to offer the cheapest contract to be chosen, but that means you're not going to be able to pay a living wage. It means that you're going to dispose of things in incinerators or greenwash to say, oh, this is environmentally friendly, but really it isn't, and also it also creates practices in communities that doesn't create thriving communities, right? So I think innovating that bid process, talking about requests for proposals, and looking greater at the value add, not just at the dollar amount, but also where it can bring cities by contracting companies that are thinking about a triple bottom line, or like, how can we service our community, service the environment, service the people, but also get the job done. And then last thing, I think, developing the local economy, developing the local circular economy, and really focusing on that is like super important. So yeah, thank you so much for, giving me space to talk about these things with you all. I really hope that working together, we can come up with some great solutions.
Thanks, Maya. And for those of you who are curious and want to learn more about CERO, CERO is a case study in the Zero Waste Master Plan in the section about composting and organics waste management. They really do some really cool work. And Maya, you were talking about better K through 12 education. Another case study that we have featured in the Zero Waste Master Plan is an example from Boulder, Colorado, where EcoCycle, a mission-based nonprofit recycler over there, is partnering with local public schools to have a really robust K through 12 education program. So yeah, all information that you can see in the Zero Waste Master Plan. And now I have a question for all three of you. We will go in the same order. The Zero Waste Master Plan is really grounded in social and environmental justice. We believe that a transition to more sustainable systems is inevitable, but justice is not. And it's that element of justice that makes the difference between a city that's just, green, but zero waste is a boutique lifestyle option for the affluent, or one that is green and truly equitable and secures well-being for all its residents. So we want to know, how has your organization or your city incorporated social and environmental justice into zero waste systems?
Okay, cool. This is a great question, and I think sometimes a hard question for people to wrap their heads around, but I want to give a context of the Department of the Environment in general. So we're lucky in San Francisco that we have an actual department, and it is made up of different programs. And one of the programs we have is the Environmental Justice Program. So we've been working, the Zero Waste team has collaborated with the Environmental Justice Program for years to work with communities to ensure that when we are spreading our message to affordable housing or to communities that speak another language other than English, that we're doing it in the right way and we're working with community and not just coming in and telling them what to do. The second thing that we have done is on our outreach team, we actually have a group called Environment Now. This is our grassroots outreach effort. And again, we work to hire people from within the community to go out and spread our work through community, and they are able to do it because they have that relationship with community. So in that sense, I think we've worked a lot in making sure that as a government entity, we're speaking to community the way we can, but it doesn't mean we stop. We continue to evolve our programs. So we're looking as a city as a whole at racial equity now, right? We've been looking at equity for a long time in our city, but I think we're moving to the next level. And that means creating a racial equity action plan for the city and county of San Francisco. So each department is tasked with creating a racial equity action plan. We're currently working on phase 1 of that plan, which looks at internal policies, programs, procedures, and then we'll be working on phase 2. And again, it's a way for us to make sure that we're working with community as a city and a county and making sure that their needs are being met. Right? So that's where we're at, always evolving what we're doing and bringing that back to our department and seeing how our programs, be it zero waste, toxics reduction, making sure that we're collaborating to get our message across and not always coming in and telling people what to do. Okay.
Great, thank you, Soko. Mary Pat, would love to hear what you think. Oh, you're on mute again.
My family would like me to take that problem home, bring that problem home. But they're not here right now. I read the question in advance, and I let me just recite something that I wrote. It was of course, San Francisco is such a model, and I need to know more about your the coordinators, because I think that's what we mean when we say our equity directors in every agency. But back in 2018, City Council President Brandon Scott, who's about to become our mayor right after the general election, we're all Democrats, so he won the primary. President Brandon Scott introduced and City Council approved what is now City Council Ordinance 18-160, quote, requiring city agencies to assess existing and proposed policies and practices, just like you're talking about, for disparate outcomes based on race, gender, sexual orientation, or income, to proactively develop policies, practices, and investments to prevent and redress those disparate outcomes. So basically that was passed back in 2018. For a year, every agency chose a coordinator, and then they were trained. And I think it's just getting to know people, as you say, Soko, that they got integrated into the agency as in that position. And now we're beginning to see the results of that. Part of the law also said that every city agency would have a trained and assigned equity coordinator. They do now, responsible for managing the program and overseeing a plan for correcting equity shortfalls. And then every time an agency has to report on city legislation, you have a bill, they come in, the agencies testify whether they love it or hate it or have no objection or whatever. And that must now contain the results of an equity assessment of the proposal's impact, whatever the bill is. How does it impact equity in the categories that I've mentioned? So you saw already the equity of our $16 million request for the money to get actually recycling containers and compost containers, starting with the neighborhoods that are the poorest and the least well-served. And we know who they are. It's obvious. And they'll start there and just distribute so that every household has its own containers that it doesn't have to buy to pitch into our first round, which has got to be recycling more, and composting that we have to really, that we're already starting to work on, but we have to jumpstart. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Pat. Maya.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is a really interesting question, and social enterprises and startups face challenges implementing these aspects because you are finding yourself interfacing with the capital-based market system, but also your business is not just thinking about that, because the environment impact and the social impact is just as important. So it requires you to increase your capacity sometimes before you're even ready to, in order to meet that mission. But SEDO has been able to do that through dedication to that mission, you know? So for example, we have a commitment to the highest and best use of organics, right? So that means no matter what, any organics we collect is going to go to a local farm. Even if it goes to an AD system, we don't want it to be mixed with human sewage. We want that AD system to have a farm application, a direct farm application. Because when you mix food waste with human sewage, it creates an increase in methane and other, it basically depletes oxygen in the water. So it will ruin our coastline. I think also working with local farms also, and building relationships like Soko mentioned earlier. So advocating at the city and state level for, you know, the social and environmental mission that we have, even though we are a for-profit, and educating people about living wages, innovating the bid process, how, you know, within innovating the bid process, you can either break a contract into smaller pieces and say, hey, I know that you may not have the capacity to bid on the whole thing, but you could just bid on this ward or this section, you know, or offering consulting and technical assistance to small businesses, so small businesses have the capacity to go after these type of contracts. From the social end, I think lifting up POC, people of color leadership, thinking about how to have POC or people of color centralized or given a fair chance, or making sure you have that outreach in your hiring process. That's something for SEDO that we have had challenges with, but it's something that we're still committed to. I think also worker ownership. So, you know, offering the chance for someone to own their work is really important. SEDO also has monthly education meetings where we discuss race, class, the history of worker-owned cooperatives. We discuss the worker movement. We also discuss how we encounter race and class at our jobs every day, where people may look at us as people who pick up trash. Really, it's a resource, it's not trash, but people sometimes look at us, oh, that's just the person who's picking up the trash, and not realize that that's actually the part owner of the company, you know? So I think really breaking down those dynamics. Also, SEDO is a multilingual workplace, so that means language access. And we also are a sanctuary workplace, right? So how can we provide a space where maybe someone who's undocumented can still be in, have the capacity to build wealth and also access worker ownership? You know, what type of support do we need to have for them? And lastly, I think in terms of the social movement and being able to bring that into a zero waste system is thinking about how does our work connect to the local circular economy, the national circular economy, and the global circular economy, and also the worker the worker cooperative movement nationally and internationally. So that's really important to us, and to build those relationships, to have people understand that it's not going to happen overnight. We don't expect you to learn how to compost or source separate right away, but it's an ongoing conversation. So maybe we'll get 10% next month, and the month after we'll get 20%, and the month after we'll get 50%, you know? And so it's really just about taking those small steps through a continuous conversation. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Maya. And the work that CERO does is amazing. I think you guys are really an exemplary model for what good green job creation through these radical transformations towards sustainability, like what that could look like. And I really hope to see more of that in other cities around the country. Great, well, we are done with our prepared question portion. We'll be spending the next part of this taking audience questions. So audience members, feel free to drop what you're thinking about in the chat. And we will start off with a question from Dan. Anyone can answer. We'll go in the same order that we've been going in. Feel free to pass if this isn't your area of expertise, but Dan wants to know, how do municipalities overcome the lack of markets for the materials they currently recycle?
I thought Pat was speaking, but okay. So, okay. So I was going to say, in San Francisco, we have been fortunate enough to be able to market our materials still, which is good. Our refuse hauler has been able to market our materials that we're collecting in our different streams, particularly recycling. I would say what we're thinking about a little bit more is really, whilst we're all about recycling and recycling is great, I think we need to start thinking upstream. I think we focus a lot on recycling and composting, and we've done this. San Francisco, we've done this for 20 years. We're doing a pretty good job of it. We need to start moving upstream and thinking more about what we are generating. And do we need to generate that type of material? And can we reduce what we're generating? Can we reduce consumption? And I think that's the bigger conversation. And I think it's the harder conversation for people to have. But we have shifted our commitments. We have new commitments. And one of our commitments is to get to 15% generation reduction by 2030, right? So this is getting us on the hook of now thinking about what are we consuming and how can we reduce consumption? And there's a variety of ways we're doing that. A lot of it is looking at how we do construction and demolition and thinking about deconstruction rather than just demolishing. It's looking at food waste prevention. And then, of course, we're still focusing on source separation, but really trying now to get at reducing consumption and thinking about materials that we're generating.
Yeah, I was just going to add really quickly. I totally agree with Soko. It begins at reducing the consumption. I think in the next, there's also the part of the upcycling too. So figuring out maybe how you can build a local infrastructure to create a new material out of that material. So for example, in Boston, there's this company that we work with sometimes, and they recycle surgical wrap, and they use the surgical wrap to create reusable bags. And Boston implemented a bag ban, a plastic bag ban. So that's pretty it's pretty helpful for people to have access to a reusable bag. And we talked to some hospitals about upcycling that surgical blue wrap into reusable bags that they can use for concierge services. When guests or hospital guests check in, they can take that bag with them.
Mary Pat, were you saying something earlier? I wasn't sure if... Oh, there you go.
I got lost. I had a journey through cyberspace. No, I was just trying to find my way home here. We're looking forward to the day when we have that problem big time in Baltimore. We talk about it, and it's wonderful to know what you all are doing, because we know who to call and we're doing the upstream part. We're upstreaming now. We've banished plastic bags. That's finally going into effect in Baltimore City. And we're working on other upstream products now. assembly. So I think that's very wise, and it's not easy because everybody, you know, has a reason they want to be able to use plastic bags, for example, and they got to go because we're trying to clean the upstream while we try to get while we're trying to move ourselves into full-fledged zero waste. We'll get there, but we're in the meantime looking exactly where you say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next question from Lawrence. What role, if any, do anchor institutions like hospitals and universities have in reducing waste? What role have they played? And how have you folks engaged or built partnerships with these anchor institutions?
Same order.
Yeah. Are we going in? Yeah.
Okay, that's
I
fine.
like it.
Okay, so, you know, speaking to universities, I went to grad school at University of San Francisco, and this is how I got started in waste minimization and recycling and composting. I helped to restart the composting program on campus, so that's how I started. The other thing is, in San Francisco, we have a mandatory recycling and composting ordinance, which applies to everyone in San Francisco, right? We implemented that, we passed the ordinance in 2009. So that already gets everyone on the hook, including these anchor institutions. And we have worked a long time with them to get programs set up. So I know for myself, working in city government, I've worked specifically with our 2 public hospitals to help them implement recycling and composting programs, but also thinking about what they're purchasing, right? How are they preventing waste? So a lot of the work that I do, it's great to have these overarching ordinances, and then you go in and understand operations again, right? So the building relationships, you have your ordinance, you find your relationships and your partners, you work with them to make the changes that are needed, right? So that's how we've done it in San Francisco. It's helped to have this ordinance, and then you have your partners and relationships, and then you go in and customize as needed.
Oh, wait a minute, let me do this right. Yeah, no, I'm on, right? I'm sorry. I'd love to read your ordinance. I didn't run for re-election this year, so I'm absolutely fearless. And that's what it's going to take in Baltimore for something like this, but it's going to have to happen. We're not there. We're not there, but we're awfully close. And if you don't mind, I'm going to follow up and get in touch with you and see about not just what the ordinance says, but what everybody yelled when it started to be enacted. Okay, what were the biggest complaints? Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think in Massachusetts, we have waste bans that come down as mandates. But the thing is that the commercial industry is largely unregulated because a lot of those mandates are self-reported, or there's only like 4 officers at the Department of Environmental Protection that's actually like looking after that mandate, and it's like nearly impossible for them to actually follow up with everyone who's violating them. So it's super, super important for anchor institutions, which a lot of times could like be their own zip codes, right? So that's like large scale. It's super important for them to develop their own zero waste plan. And a lot of times those zero waste plans follow the city's or the town's zero waste planning process, right? So when they see the cities doing it, then they're like, oh, okay, we have to get into line. Now, when it comes to anchor institutions, it depends, in my experience in working with them, it depends on whether they're, for-profit or nonprofit, and whether they're private or public. And also just what is their budget like? What is their budgeting process? And I think really making the economic case for why recycling and composting programs and zero waste planning overall for the long run makes sense for them is super important, because if they don't see how it affects their operations long term with climate change, or in the immediate term with landfill prices and trash prices increasing, then they're not going to really want to participate. But I think from that end, really getting the high level, C-level, or the executive suite on board, the presidents on board with the zero waste plans, and getting them to have a commitment to it is really the only way that it's going to work throughout the whole company. Because if they don't have that commitment from the top, then usually people are like, well, no one's telling me to do this. You are coming from the outside trying to, tell me to do this, but I don't feel there needs to be the commitment from the organization. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Maya. Great. And someone else was wondering, what incentives are there for businesses to participate in zero waste programs, and ranging from grocery stores to restaurants to office buildings?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. What incentives are there for businesses to participate in zero waste programs? And these businesses can range from grocery stores to restaurants to offices.
So in San Francisco, we have what's called a pay-as-you-throw system. You pay for the amount of material that you generate across the board. The incentive is to recycle and compost more. And the simplest way to say it is that you save money by recycling and composting more, because you get a recovery discount. And it's a fairly bigger, longer process, but that's the incentive. So for us, the more you recycle and compost, the more money you save, the better it is for your institution or your business. So this is across the city. Now, I recognize that we're unique in San Francisco that we have this, but that's how we incentivize people to recycle and compost. And this is not to say that people don't care about the environment. Of course they do. So we have different incentives. If we're talking about the cost incentive, this is it that we have, the pay-as-you-throw system.
Yeah, I think the incentives for commercial entities to institute zero waste planning is usually economic, like I mentioned before. So showing them the cost savings analysis of like, okay, if you reduce your trash by 30 to 40% because you're taking out the food waste, and food waste is going to cost like 20% less to bring it to the farm than to bring it to the landfill, then you have like that 10% saving. Basically, that's the case. Otherwise, it's mission aligned. So hospitals see climate change as a public health issue. So making sure that their composting and recycling is important in that way. Large biopharmaceutical companies or tech companies, that's important for themselves, for them in that sense. Usually it's their employees that care and push them to do it, or the biopharmaceutical is also the public health angle. Then if you have like, food industries, manufacturing, wholesale, breweries, distilleries, all of the cannabis industry, all of those things depend on the environment still working well, right? So that's that incentive. Then I think beyond that, the best incentive, I think, is definitely the economic one. So in Massachusetts, when we were doing the zero waste steering committee and process, a lot of people were like, okay, well, we shouldn't do pay as you throw, which there was this complaint that we shouldn't do pay as you throw because low income people wouldn't be able to access it or something like that. But I think there is a way to redesign so that you can use food stamps or whatever public assistance to, pay for the pay as you throw. And then again, you're going to save the money if you can compost or recycle. But I also think the largest incentive will be created through education. If people don't know what's happening, then they're not going to be incentivized to be part of the solution.
For sure. Mary Pat, would you like to go?
One thing. I know it sounds like a small thing for all you Boston and San Francisco people. I love you. It might seem like a small thing, but I mentioned before we needed this $16 million because there are whole neighborhoods. Well, because we want to move in this zero waste direction, and there are whole, and we're a city with lots of alleys. That's where the trash gets picked up mainly. Row houses and alleys are very traditional in Baltimore, and basically people. Right now you have to buy recycling bins, and yeah, they don't cost much, but they cost more than anyone can afford if they don't have enough money just to eat and to pay the rent and whatever. So we want, as one of the first things to happen, to be visible where the need is the greatest for zero waste, which is the neighborhoods, the underserved neighborhoods, the neighborhoods of low income, so that people can visibly see that they're part of an effort. And then my other experience in a million years of trying to sell even recycling back when that was a hard sale is that the only way to do it is go to the schools. Please let us be able to do that. Go to the schools, educate the kids, and assign them to keep the household doing the recycling and now composting. And they'll do it. And that's how it spreads. But we also need to give people the right equipment to do it with. And we can't be charging them a bunch of money when they can't afford to give their kids some money for lunch.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I think just one more thing I forgot to add, LEED design buildings, composting is low hanging fruit for them. They have to do so many other things that creating a composting program is super easy. So
really?
Yeah.
Wait, who?
Yeah, LEED design buildings. So LEED is an architectural certification for buildings that are green, designed in a green and sustainable way. So adding a composting program, super easy. And the other thing is, I am really interested in how we can have composting be counted towards carbon credits for large corporations. It's the methane CO2 equivalent is common knowledge for everyone in the sustainability space. So I want to know, why is composting not counted as carbon credits? I haven't found the answer yet, and I don't know if the lobbyist has to do that, but that's just something that I think if you want to talk about how to get commercial entities to introduce zero waste, is introduce it as carbon credits and tax write-offs.
Well, who's in charge of those credits? The feds or the states?
I think you can have it on both levels. And there's also an international carbon trading marketplace as well.
Yeah, and Maya, you're totally right about methane. Over a 20-year period, methane is known to be 84 times more potent as a greenhouse gas than CO2, which I think, like you were saying, a lot of folks don't realize that huge climate mitigation potential of organics. So one last question, we have time for one more, and something that you guys have all alluded to a little bit is the importance of education in rolling out these programs. So what are some of the education plans that you're implementing alongside composting and recycling programs?
So to Maya's point, we also actually have a school education program that goes out to schools and teaches recycling and composting. So yes, get them when they're young. It's really important. But also with our outreach team, we either have campaigns or we go do door to door, or in language as well. So not just, we have to be sensitive to that, especially in San Francisco, where majority of people, English is not their first language. So we really have tried to be really sensitive to that and think about how we go out and do outreach to community in language. And like I said, like a lot of what I've had to do just with city departments is going out and doing presentations. So this was like at all staff meetings. That's the best one, is like, if you can get on the all staff meeting, even for 10 minutes, I have found that doing face-to-face presentations more than anything else is what helps get people to change their behavior, because they're talking to another person, right? It's not, online is great. And I know this is hard. We're online right now, right? But at least we're having a conversation together. We can see each other. And that's what I found with people. People need that face-to-face interaction and just having those conversations and starting that building of a relationship and getting to the why and understanding each other's point of views. That's what's going to get us to drive change, right? So it's not just about putting the bin and saying, okay, I'm done, or even putting up the sign. You need all of that. You need the bins, the signs, and talking to the people to get anything done.
And that is what exactly is in the Fair Development Plan that City Council in Baltimore approved. Those bins are all about our way to begin educating in those neighborhoods and give people the way to do it. I mean, we gave away in a couple of administrations ago a great big 92-gallon trash cans. Well, people are saying now, make that for recycling and get one of those little bins for trash. So we're already talking about it, but that's in the plan that we're being negotiated against right now. And so we got to go thumb wrestle a bit. But then that's exactly where we wanted to begin it's Happy New Year to Zero Waste, Baltimore. Thanks.
Nice. So for SEDO, we charge for our pickups, but we offer free educational trainings to all of our clients, and anyone who asks for it. We'll go, we will talk, we will either talk about our work or talk about source separation, or why is it important to compost? What is the composition of compost? What does it mean to have an anaerobic digestion system and things like that? So
yeah, right.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know these things. So for us, education takes the form of these face-to-face trainings, but we have made all of our resources available virtually. So we have recorded our training and put it on YouTube. We created quizzes and infographics to check if people have really processed the information and internalized it. So just purely stating to people, things that come from the earth go into the compost. Things that don't go into the compost. And just having people understand that when you put food waste in the trash, it creates this chain reaction that eventually is going to affect them. So, yeah.
Amen.
Agreed.
Well, thanks so much for speaking on this panel. I'm so thrilled to have been joined by 3 really brilliant ladies.
Thank you.
There's so much knowledge about this. Thank you to all who attended. We can send out all of the resources that we brought up in this space in a follow-up email, including the Zero Waste Master Plan and recordings of the previous events, which had other awesome community organizers and elected officials and representatives from places like the NAACP. So really encourage you all to check those out if you have time. Thanks for all being here, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you. And ladies, great to meet you all.
Great to meet you too.
I will be in touch.
You. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Gaia.
Bye.